Hello again, everybody. It's Miss Clonico. We are here today to talk about topic 7.4, which is looking at women and economic development. And we're going to get started with SPS 7D1, which one of the things to kind of keep in mind when we're talking about women and economic development is that in general, women and men experience economic development very differently. However, as economies develop, women's lives change with increasing opportunity and more progress towards gender equality tends to be made. With this EK, we're going to be talking about the roles of women and how they change as development changes. So we're going to start by kind of looking at the bigger picture in the sense that economic development profoundly changes women's lives and their roles in society, and it increases their access and the economic opportunities that are available to them. When looking at family life, we want to think kind of historically for a second that many cultures, for a lot of different reasons, have historically valued sons over daughters, and a gender bias exists within many societies. But as economic growth and development increases, those biases can weaken and shift towards more equality. Traditionally, men have gotten more and better education than women because education was linked to employment, and men were more likely and encouraged and allowed to get jobs outside the home. So families tended to invest a lot more in male education because it was seen as a better payout. They saw it as, better education equals better income, which means more economic support for the family. As countries developed economically, more and better jobs became available for everyone, and more girls and women tended to get better and longer educations than before, enrolling in secondary schools, which again are high schools, as well as colleges and universities. In some areas, women are on track to have higher education than men, and in the United States, more women attend college than men do at this point. Alongside the higher educational rates comes other effects that change women's roles in society and the family, including delayed marriages and motherhood, which leads to declining fertility rates as well and shifts away from more traditional roles more and more as those countries become more developed. And this is something that we talked about in Unit 2 when looking at education and things like fertility rates. Now, when we're looking at the public life, we want to think in terms of spatial patterns for gender roles. Women tend to be assigned private roles, meaning inside the household, while men have had more public roles historically, like in the workforce and at different scales. But economic development shifts the role of women into a more public sphere than they had before, though they are still often expected to take care of the private sphere at the same time. Now, there's a couple things that are going on here when it comes to the public life side of things, in the sense that mobility increases, and mobility would be the ability to move around the public world independent of others. And this has changed for women as economic development improves because they become more involved in things outside the home, like school and work, and it becomes more common, acceptable, and safer for women to move around the public sphere independent of men. However, it is important to note that the level of mobility depends on the culture of a community as well as the economic development. And many women in countries all over the world do not feel safe moving around the public sphere on their own. And there have been responses to that within different cultures that have sought to help protect women from violence and other negative kind of backlash. Higher education rates also mean that women participate more in the public sphere through things like civic involvement, which could either be community organizations or politics at different levels. However, this is again influenced by culture within individual countries, and in some parts of the world, there might be cultural kind of taboos against women being involved in the public sphere, so that can cause a decrease in some areas, even if their economic development is higher. And we also see the UN using what's called the Gender Empowerment Measure, or GEM, G-E-M, to examine gender inequality through the proportion of seats in the national legislatures, the percentage of women in economic decision-making roles, and women's versus men's share of earned income, which can also give us an idea of what their roles are in the public sphere. That's going to take us to our next EK, so I'll be back with you shortly to pick up again with SPS 7D2.